Hi there and welcome to My Week. I'm Christy McDonald. Thanks so much for joining us. Coming up tonight, the mess that is the failed Wayne County Jail project. Plus, Detroiters who are against bankruptcy for the city, well, they got a chance to tell the judge why. Also, the race for Senator Carl Levin's seat got pretty interesting this week. And that leads us to our first topic tonight, Michigan Republicans heading to Mackinac Island for their leadership conference. Why is that such a big deal? Well, because they're the party in power and what they think is shaping our state. Plus, it is a national power brokers gathering. Several potential presidential candidates will be there as well. We start there tonight with our contributors and the editorial page editors of the Detroit News and Detroit Free Press, Nolan Finley and Stephen Henderson. Happy Friday, gentlemen.
It is a good one.
And you'll be ending the evening up in Mackinac Island for the big conference.
There's no telling what'll happen.
So many Republicans all in one place, Nolan.
In one place.
All right, so people at home are sitting there and saying, why do we even care? The Republicans are all meeting on Mackinac. What makes this conference an important one?
Well, 2014, important election, both nationally and in Michigan. You're going to see the campaign, the Michigan campaign, start shaping up. Governor Terri Lynn Land will be up there, the gubernatorial and Senate candidate. But you also have a lot of folks coming into the island, a lot of national figures, starting to test out their messages for a national presidential race. Bobby Jindal's up there, Paul Rand's up there, Scott Walker's up there. It's going to be pretty fascinating to hear them and be able to compare them all over the course of a weekend.
All right, so Stephen, we have a lot to talk about when it comes to this. We can talk about what's happening on the state level. We can talk about governor leadership, a little bit of Tea Party, and also the national story, I think, for Republicans in Michigan. But let's talk first of all, looking nationally. Why is Michigan still such a big spotlight for all these national candidates to come into?
Well, it's an important state. I mean, it's a bellwether, even though Republicans tend to get clobbered here in national elections. Haven't won a presidential election here.
So why is it still so important? Wouldn't you say that Michigan would start to fall off the map for the Republicans?
It's a very big manufacturing state. This is also one of the few big state conferences like this that you have for a party, and so it's an opportunity to get on a stage and get some attention. You can't do this everywhere, and so normally I go to this conference, even though I'm probably sort of the skunk at the picnic. This year I'm not able to go, but I will say that every time I've been, I have been impressed by the range of people they are able to attract, by the range of topics that get discussed. It's a pretty important.
A lot of money comes out of Michigan too for the Republican Party. Some major funders here. So I mean, even though you think, well, winning Michigan in a presidential race has been a long shot recently, you can't ignore it because there is a lot of the funders live in Michigan.
So then wouldn't you say then that it's a very big deal for them to win a Senate seat here?
Well, and they have a good chance this time. There was Republicans weren't all that excited about Terri Lynn Land when she started her campaign. They kept looking around to see who might be better out there. They courted Dave Camp. They courted Mike Rogers. They seemed to be for a while looking for anybody but Terri. But she stuck it out. The others dropped out, and the polls have been in her favor. The Steve Mitchell poll put her out ahead 39-36 first.
Wait, now I've got to stop, and I've got to ask why you're laughing, because you can't laugh without telling us why you're laughing at him.
Because I can show you another poll from a left-wing organization that says that Gary P is going to stomp her. I mean, first of all, it's early. It's very, very early.
But you can't.
The polling is not
and that's
great.
True because polling is mostly measuring partisanship right now.
Yes.
But you can't put Mitchell in that category. Mitchell's been a pretty square pollster, and you had 3 polls, inclooking
Mitchell believed that Mitt Romney was going to win the election last year.
But his polling
he
never
believed.
showed that.
He believed.
You
yes,
look at the Dino poll, which is a Democratic poll, had them dead even, and it was it's a encouraging. She's going to put probably $5 million of her own money in this race, which makes her a formidable candidate.
That is a huge deal. Does that also make a good candidate, the fact that you can bring that kind of money to your...
It's the only candidate, and that's why she's the only candidate in that race. Everybody else, if you talk to them about the kind of money that they felt like was going to have to be raised for the Senate race, I think, it's daunting, and I'm not sure that everybody else felt like they could get to it.
It's going to be a $25 million race, probably on both sides.
On both sides.
On both sides?
But Gary Peters sit on a big war chest.
He's got $2 million as an incumbent. congressman, you know, you get that.
You can answer
Wait,
that.
I'm sorry. Is someone calling you while we're on the
want me to
set
get
right now? Look, it's Terri Lynn Land. All right. So Nolan, next time Nolan's going to turn off his phone. What a rookie.
Probably not.
So let's talk a little bit about. Let's go back to where you were talking about that she was not the first pick. Did she, you know, get her feelings hurt a little bit by that? Does that send a signal to the rest of the voters that, hey, we really didn't want her at first, but now because she's the last man standing, that it's okay?
Politics, and she understands that. Look, this is somebody who was the top vote getter on the entire ballot, both in 2002 and 2006.
So she's got
a
statewide recognition more than Gary Peters
She's got
does.
high name recognition. She's got a good grassroots organization. She's done this before. She's very good at working the grassroots. She's been not as well working the party leadership, and that was her problem. But you can't discount her as a candidate. She's known statewide, has won 2 statewide races. Gary Peters lost his only statewide race, and his base of strength is pretty well limited to southeastern Michigan. He's got a lot of work to do getting his name out statewide.
And so has he already started on that work? And what do you think his chances are, Stephen, against Terri Lynn Land and the fact that she does have statewide recognition?
Well, I mean, I think it's a climb for him, and I think, frankly, he would have done better just off the rip against someone like Mike Rogers, who I think is a stronger candidate on some of the fundamentals, but less well known statewide than Terri Lynn Land. It's more of a match of equals of name recognition in that way. I think this is not going to be a pushover. There's no question for either party. This will be a very hard-fought race. I think the Democrats probably end up taking it anyway. Republicans haven't won a Senate race here in a very long time. I think it's 15 years.
Well, but that's not that far.
Years.
That's not that far off. Do you think?
Senate
It depends.
races.
I mean, a lot. You've got to take a look, and you've got to look at the last several election cycles. They've, 2006, 2008, 2010 were all sort of these wild swing elections, and we can't sit here today and know whether this is going to be a wild swing for Republicans this time or a wild swing for Democrats, or if it's going to be more like 2012 and sort of a wash. You've got a lot of people now growing concerned about the status quo in Washington, and you don't know who that's going to be taken out against.
Speaking of the status quo in Washington, the people are already using that against Gary Peters. We've already started to see that ad that has come up. So the race is really
If it's a throw the rascals out year, it works really poor for him. And I'm not sure how much help the president is going to be by this time next year. He's going through a rough patch himself. So whether he can come in here and help get him elected is a big question.
All right, so what do you think Terri Lynn Land has to say this weekend to all these Republicans gathered up on Mackinac Island, Stephen? I was going to ask him first.
I actually think she's in good shape. That's their candidate. They're not going to turn on her at this point. They don't have an alternative. And frankly, Terri Lynn Land is the kind of Republican who can win statewide in Michigan. This is not an overly conservative state. It's not a big Tea Party state when you get to the statewide level. She's a conservative, but a practical conservative and not a radical sort of social conservative. They would be very smart just to be singing her praises at this point, getting in line and trying to align themselves to fight Gary Peters next year, because he's going to be a good candidate.
All right, what do you think?
Well, the rap on Terri in the past has been she's a lot better at the politics, at the going out and the campaigning and winning over hearts and votes than she is with the issue. She had a really bad debate performance in her gubernatorial debate on Mackinac way back when, 4 years ago, I guess. Yeah. And so they're working real hard with it. They've got Mike Rogers sort of tutoring her on the international issues. They're going to bring in, or Pete Hoekstra is helping her with that. They're going to bring Cap and Rogers in to talk to her about the domestic issues. They're really working to make sure that she's not just a good campaigner, that she's solid with the issues, that she can present herself as someone folks are comfortable with sending down to Washington.
Does she walk away with a lot of money this weekend?
Oh yeah, I mean, there are going to be some check writers up there, and she hopes by the end of September to have $2 million in her account. That's a big amount of money to start with.
She reminds me a little of Debbie Stabenow before she won her Senate seat, and there wasn't a lot of depth there with Stabenow. I mean, there was a lot that she had to learn, and that first, I would say that first couple of years was pretty rough. But I think similarly, they are very smart women, and they work real hard. I think Terri Lynn Land is exactly the kind of candidate the Republicans should be really excited about for something like that Senate seat.
All right, so they're all going to rally around Terri Lynn Land this weekend. What about statewide Republicans? Are they all going to be rallying together and they joining in the same message, or is there going to be a little bit of a rift between some Tea Party Republicans and the governor's camp?
I mean, the Republicans of late are starting to look a little like the Democratic Party in Michigan that we've all been so familiar with. They've been fighting a lot, and it was a good stretch when John Engler was in control of that party, where the party was pretty much in lockstep, and it produced some good results for them. They started to wander off like cats. Now, Tea Party's going up there; they're still rattling around like they're going to make a challenge.
Why are they mad? Why are they mad?
Because mad is what they do. I mean, the Tea Party formed out of anger over Obamacare. Anger is sort of their thing. So right now they're angry at their own party. You hope that by next November they've turned their anger to more constructive uses. But, they're angry over the Medicaid expansion vote. These are ideological purists. You can't give them enough. And anybody who governs from a practical standpoint, like Rick Snyder does, is going to be in trouble with the ideologues.
And is Rick Snyder in trouble from this branch of the Republican
Well,
Party?
I mean, I think there's no real challenge going to be mounted to Rick Snyder next year. Whether he can keep Brian Calley with him on that ticket will be the one minor, I think, question. And
why? Talk about that.
Well, they're taking shots at Calley because he was prepared to cast that deciding vote on Medicaid if he had to. But that's not, the truth is Brian Calley is the one in the room who's more likely to voice the conservative wing of the party's platforms. In this administration.
He comes out of the religious right.
That's right. I mean, he's more like them than the other people in that administration. So targeting him is just
so. Is this just cage rattling just to make noise?
No, they're upset, and they're going to be upset. How much they're going to be willing to do about it is the question, or how much they can do. They've got to win. There's no way they're going to line up behind the Democratic candidates next year.
Right.
So they're going to be stuck with this guy, and they're going to have to kiss and make up and figure out a way to help him keep his seat, which shouldn't be terribly hard, we think, right now. But
I don't know.
There's still some work.
You just never know what we're going to have. In the last Republican convention, this oddball Tea Party guy, Corson, he came in within a whisker of being party chair.
Yeah.
And so they've got a lot. They've done a lot of good organizing in terms of precinct delegates and what have you. They've got a lot more clout at the convention than they do at the in total votes, and they could make trouble. And if they stick Snyder with a running mate,
yes, and they have,
I mean, they could really weaken.
And they have, and this is the thing that you don't see as much in the Democratic Party. I mean, you have people in the House, people in the Senate who are part of this wing of the party and have a tremendous amount of influence over legislation. That makes it very difficult to govern, and that's what the governor's problem has been lately.
Sort of like the labor wing of the Democratic Party.
Well, but you know what? That's not the same, because you don't see the labor wing of the Democratic Party giving the president fits over his agenda.
Okay, Nolan. So you've kind of compared the Republicans a little bit to the Democrats, and also scattering cats, which again, the visuals are very good. Now I've got it. But when you're up there this weekend, what will you see, or what will give you the sense of what the health is of the Michigan Republican Party, if you see or hear what?
Well, I mean, if they spend more time sniping at each other than talking about their differences with the Democratic candidates they're going to face, if it's all about internal fighting and not sort of shaping a message that they're going to use to go after Democrats, you know you've got trouble. I think they'll come together. Bobby Shostak, party chairman, did a lot to sort of reach out to them. He's bringing Rand Paul up there Paul's their hero. What Paul has to say to them will be very important if he presents a unifying message, and you never know with him what message he's going to bring. But if he presents a unifying message, I think it'll go a long way to help.
What do you think the Michigan Republicans need to do this weekend?
Well, I mean, I think they gotta rally behind. They sit in a position of some strength. I mean, they control the governorship and both houses of the legislature. I'm not sure this is the time to have a big family fight. You know, I mean, you want to get your act together so you can maintain what you have going for you next year.
And if you get a lot of primary fights in these House races and these other races, it's just going to weaken them going into the general election. And they could lose the House next year.
Oh, I think they will.
This right.
My money is on them losing the House next year because of the problems that the governor's having with the economy, which are not likely to turn around anytime soon. The options that he has
Michigan's economy has moved from the worst performing to the sixth best performing.
4 straight months of increased unemployment at a time when it's still going down nationally, at a time when other states that have tried.
But can you blame the House on that? Can you blame the House on that?
I think
Obamacare on that.
Well, why is that not happening for everybody else then?
It is happening
No, it's
to everybody
not.
else.
Nationally, it's going down. Here, it's going up.
Unemployment is
going down
nationally only because so many people are dropping out of the job market.
Oh, that's not true.
There's 2 million fewer people working today than there was 4 years ago.
But there are lots of states where
participation in the job market is at its lowest level.
There are lots of
Stephen,
states.
go.
There are lots of states that are growing their economy. Minnesota is the best example regionally, a state that has, again, more investment in education than we do, a different tax structure. There are some other things we need to do to get our economy going that the Republican majority in Lansing is unwilling to talk about. There are things that Rick Snyder talked about during his campaign. The talent agenda, right? How do you invest in growing talent here and attracting talent here? And that word invest, conservatives don't like it. They think that means spend. It does, but it's spending with the expectation of a return. And we just can't get that conversation going in the legislature. They're more interested in beating up on welfare moms and
is going to be
women.
jobs. It's
Last
going to be
word,
economic
Nolan.
growth. And if all he has to do is ask that simple question, are you better off today in Michigan than you were 4 years ago?
He's added fewer jobs in his first 3 years than Jim Blanchard did after he raised taxes in his first 3 years.
You've got an economy that's growing much faster than it had for a decade, and that's
that's saying nothing. It was shrinking for a decade.
Part because Rick Snyder came in and put sensible policies in place.
So much for the last word, right?